déjà vu. General Nguema, who weeks ago shed his military fatigues to don the suit of a civilian politician, is poised to claim victory in an election that feels less like a democratic rebirth and more like a carefully choreographed coronation. And in a move that raises eyebrows across the continent, President Umaro Sissoco Embalo of Guinea-Bissau has already extended congratulations to Nguema. As if the will of Gabon's 1 million voters is a mere formality, this, my brothers and sisters, is not just an election. It is a moment that lays bare the fault lines of Africa's struggle for true sovereignty, a struggle where Gabon now teeters precariously. Let us set the stage. On April the 12th, 2025, an estimated 1 million Gabonese, out of a population of 2.3 million, headed to the polls, their hearts heavy with the weight of history and the flicker of hope. This was no ordinary vote. It was the first presidential election since Nguema's coup ended the Bongo dynasty, a regime that had clung to power since 1967, first under Omar Bongo and then his son Ali. For 55 years, the Bongos ruled Gabon like a private estate, their opulence gleaming against the backdrop of a nation where 1 in 3 people languishes below the poverty line, despite the country's vast oil wealth. The 2023 coup, swift and unopposed, was hailed by many as a necessary rupture, a chance to break the chains of kleptocracy and dynastic rule. Nguema, then head of the elite Republican Guard and a cousin to Ali Bongo, stepped forward not as a conqueror, but as a self-styled savior, promising to restore dignity, root out corruption, and return power to civilians. Last November, 860,000 registered voters overwhelmingly approved a new constitution in a referendum, setting the stage for this election. The constitution promised 2 7-year presidential terms, a ban on dynastic succession, and amnesty for those involved in ousting Ali Bongo. Officials projected an additional 300,000 new voters, including young Gabonese coming of age, swelling the register to reflect a nation eager for change. But comrades, let us not be swayed by the pageantry of ballot boxes and campaign slogans. The election, with 8 candidates in the race, was never a level playing field. 4 independents threw their hats into the ring, but all eyes were on Nguema, the man whose face adorns billboards from Libreville's markets to its airports. His campaign slogan, Gabon, a play on his initials and the French for "it's good," echoing like a mantra. Analysts, from the streets of Port Gentil to the halls of global think tanks, pegged him as the favourite from the start, not because of some divine mandate, but because the system was sculpted in his image. The new constitution and electoral code, critics argue, were tailored to ensure his eligibility, with provisions allowing military personnel to run and age limits conveniently barring older opposition figures like Albert Ondo Ossa. Nguema's closest rival, Alain-Claude Bilie-By-Nzi, a former prime minister under Ali Bongo, campaigned as a pragmatic reformer, vowing to slash government bloat and create jobs. But Nzi's ties to the old regime, having served both Omar and Ali Bongo, made his calls for change ring hollow to many. The other candidates, including tax inspector Joseph Lapense Essigone and Gninga Channing Zanaba, the sole woman in the race, struggled to break through Nguema's omnipresent shadow. Now, here is where the plot thickens, and where our Pan-Africanist lens must sharpen. Even before the vote count reached its midpoint, Umaro Sissoco Embalo, president of Guinea-Bissau, took to the airwaves to congratulate Nguema, as if the outcome were preordained. This is no small matter, comrades. Embalo's haste reeks of a regional elite closing ranks, a nod to a status quo that thrives on continuity rather than disruption. For a Pan-Africanist, this moment is a clarion call to question, whose interests are being served by such premature endorsements? Are we witnessing the birth of a new democratic Gabon, or the repackaging of an old order under a new face? Nguema's campaign leaned heavily on his image as an anti-corruption crusader, a man who took down a dynasty not for personal gain, but for the people. He made headlines in October by refusing to draw a presidential salary, a gesture that won him plaudits in a country where the elite successes are a daily insult to the poor. He has pushed infrastructure projects, 1,400 kilometres of new roads, 400 taxis distributed to youth, and promised to diversify an economy tethered to declining oil fields. The World Bank notes Gabon's economy grew 2.9% in 2024, up from 2.4% in 2023, fueled by these projects and commodities like manganese and timber. To many Gabonese, like civil servant Eugène Ndonga, Nguema represents hope for lower food prices and better living conditions. Yet, comrades, we must not be seduced by the sheen of progress. Scratch the surface and the contradictions pile high. Nguema, for all his talk of reform, is no outsider to the system he claims to dismantle. A cousin to Ali Bongo, he served as aide-de-camp to Omar Bongo and rose through the ranks of the Republican Guard, a force he later led to seize power. A 2020 investigation by the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, exposed his purchase of 3 Maryland properties for over $1 million in cash, assets that raise questions about his own wealth in a nation where poverty is rampant. Unlike Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré, who has become a folk hero across Africa for severing ties with France and aligning with anti-imperialist powers like Russia, Nguema has doubled down on Gabon's historic alliance with Paris. While Traoré, Mali's Assimi Goïta, and Niger's Abdourahmane Chiani have expelled French troops and denounced neo-colonial exploitation, Nguema has cozied up to President Emmanuel Macron, transforming the French military base at Camp de Gaulle into a joint training centre. This is no accident, comrades. France, which propped up the Bongos for decades, sees in Nguema a pliable partner, a bulwark against the anti-Western tides sweeping the Sahel. Posts on X have noted that Gabon remains one of only 2 African nations still hosting French troops, a fact that underscores Nguema's divergence from the liberationist ethos of his regional peers. This brings us to a deeper wound, one that every Pan-Africanist must confront. Across Africa, coups have surged since 2020, Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger and now Gabon. But not all coups are created equal. Traoré and his ilk are celebrated as liberators, men who dared to defy the West's stranglehold and prioritise their people's sovereignty. Nguema, despite his populist rhetoric, is conspicuously absent from this pantheon. Why? Because his coup, bloodless though it was, feels less like a revolution and more like a palace reshuffle. The Bongo dynasty may be gone, but the system, oiled by French interests and elite privilege, remains intact. Bili Bayenzi, Nguema's rival, has accused him of locking down the vote, pointing to an electoral commission stacked with loyalists and a campaign bankrolled by state resources. Gabonese democracy is in danger, Enzi told Reuters, warning that Nguema's control of the military, finances and state machinery tilts the scales irrevocably. Even the Union for Democracy and Social Integration UDIS party, once a Bongo ally, has cried foul, alleging that its exiled leader, Hervé Patrick Opianga, is being targeted with trumped-up charges of incest and undermining state security to silence dissent. Opianga, now 54, has proclaimed his innocence and appealed to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, a reminder that Nguema's Gabon may not be as free as he claims. So, what does Nguema's all but certain victory mean for the people of Gabon? For some, it offers stability, a chance to build on the tangible gains of the past 19 months. New roads, jobs for youth, and a reprieve from the Bongo name. Voters like Noel Counter, who spoke to the BBC, yearn for a well-governed Gabon with social justice, equity and equal chances. Shoni's Akula Tele, a 30-year-old pharmacist, dreams of a president who will tackle unemployment, particularly in the private sector. The 87.12% voter turnout reported by the Interior Ministry suggests a populace eager to shape its future, a far cry from the apathy of the Bongo era. Nguema's promise to conserve Gabon's biodiverse forests and diversify its economy resonates with those who see potential in tourism and agriculture. His 7-year mandate, renewable once, could in theory provide the runway to deliver on these pledges. But comrades, let us not drink the Kool-Aid of optimism without questioning its source. For every road built, there are whispers of muzzled voices. For every taxi handed out, there are allegations of cronyism. Nguema's victory may cement his grip on power, but it risks entrenching a new kind of autocracy, one draped in democratic cloth, but cut from the same elite fabric. The absence of a bongo on the ballot is historic, but the presence of bongo-era holdovers in Nguema's orbit, former ministers, loyalists and allies, suggests continuity over rupture. Political analyst Berges Miete told the BBC that true change requires a renewal of the political class and method of governance, something Gabon has yet to see. The economy, while growing, remains tethered to oil, which accounts for $6 billion in annual exports, but is in decline. Nearly 40% of youth remain jobless, and basic services like electricity and water elude many, as electrician Hervé Regis Osowami lamented to Reuters. Nguema's coziness with France, at a time when anti-French sentiment surges across Africa, alienates those who see Paris as the architect of their woes. His refusal to break with the West, unlike Traoré, raises a haunting question. Was the 2023 coup a liberation or a recalibration to preserve foreign interests? For the Pan-Africanist, Nguema's win is a bitter pill. It underscores the complexity of our continent's fight for self-determination. Not every coup is a revolution, and not every strongman is a savior. Gabon's people deserve more than a choice between dynasties and juntas, between Paris and poverty. They deserve leaders who will sever the colonial umbilical cord, not tighten it, who will redistribute wealth, not hoard it, who will amplify dissent, not crush it. Nguema's victory may bring calm, but calm is not justice. It may bring projects, but projects are not freedom. As we watch the final votes trickle in, let us hold fast to our vision of an Africa unchained, where power serves the many, not the few. Let us stand with the Gabonese who dream of a nation reborn, and let us call out with unyielding clarity any attempt to dress old oppressions in new clothes. The struggle continues, comrades, today in Gabon, tomorrow across our beloved continent. Before I conclude, please allow me say this. Across Africa, from the bustling markets of Lagos to the quiet villages of Burkina Faso, a bitter truth festers. Democracy, that sacred word peddled by the West and parroted by our leaders, has become a tool not of liberation but of oppression. It is a mask worn by African elites to conceal their servitude to foreign capitals, Paris, London, Washington, while their own people choke on poverty, silence, and broken dreams. As Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the Lion of Burkina Faso, has declared with unapologetic clarity, no African nation has developed under this so-called democracy. And yet the very leaders who drape themselves in democratic robes are the ones who crush protests, muzzle dissent, and sell our resources to the highest bidder. Today, we expose this charade. We demand an end to this betrayal, and we call for African leaders to rule with honesty, if they must rule at all, without hiding behind a system that serves the West and starves the rest. For while these democrats falter, leaders like Traoré, unburdened by the pretense of Western approval, are forging paths that shame their hypocrisy and light a fire in the hearts of Africans yearning for true sovereignty. Let us begin with the lie itself. Democracy, as sold to Africa, was meant to be a beacon of freedom, a system where the will of the people reigns supreme, where leaders are accountable and where progress is shared. But look around, comrades. What do we see? From Nigeria to Kenya, South Africa to Senegal, the democratic experiment has birthed not prosperity but pain. Since the wave of independence in the 1960s, African nations have been coerced into adopting Western-style governance, multi-party elections, parliaments, constitutions, under the watchful eye of former colonial powers and their institutions, the IMF and World Bank. Yet, after decades of ballots and campaigns, what is the harvest? According to the African Development Bank, 60% of Africans live on less than $3 a day. Youth unemployment hovers at 30% continent-wide, with countries like South Africa hitting 60% for those under 20. Our schools crumble, our hospitals lack medicine, and our resources, oil, gold, lithium, flow out to fuel Western economies while we beg for loans with crippling interest. Captain Traoré's words ring true. No African nation has climbed the ladder of development under this system. Instead, democracy has become a stage where elites perform for foreign applause, leaving their people as mere props. Consider the evidence, comrades, and let it fuel your outrage. In Nigeria, hailed as West Africa's democratic giant, elections are marred by violence, vote buying, and rigging allegations. The 2023 polls saw a turnout of just 27%, a cry of disillusionment from a populace that knows their votes rarely change the script. Yet, President Bola Tinubu, a darling of Western capitals, presides over an economy where inflation hit 34% in 2024, and fuel subsidies were slashed at the IMF's behest, plunging millions deeper into poverty. In Kenya, President William Ruto, another democratic poster child, faced nationwide protests in 2024 over a finance bill that raised taxes on basic goods. His response? Tear gas, live bullets, and over 40 deaths, according to Amnesty International. This is the face of African democracy, a system where leaders campaign on change, win with Western backing, and then govern against their own people to protect foreign interests. The World Bank praises their reforms, while citizens starve. Now, let us contrast this with the so-called democratic freedoms these leaders claim to uphold. Freedom of speech. In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni, in power since 1986 under a multi-party facade, has jailed journalists and banned opposition rallies. The Committee to Protect Journalists reported 12 arrests of media workers in 2023 alone. Freedom to protest? In Zimbabwe, President Emerson Mnangagwa's regime routinely deploys police to crush demonstrations, with Human Rights Watch documenting teen protest-related arrests in 2024. Freedom to criticize? In Rwanda, President Paul Kagame, re-elected in 2024 with 99% of the vote, has made dissent a dangerous act. Opposition leader Victoire Ingabire remains under surveillance after years in prison. These are not exceptions, comrades, they are the rule. Across Africa, the democratic label is a hollow shell, used to justify repression while leaders cozy up to the West. On X, Africans vent their frustration. Democracy in Africa is just a costume for dictators, one user wrote in March 2025. Another asked, why do we keep voting when the West picks our leaders? The sentiment is clear. Democracy, as practiced, is a betrayal. This betrayal is no accident. It is by design. The West, comrades, has never wanted a truly sovereign Africa. From the assassination of Patrice Lumumba to the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah, colonial powers have ensured that Africa's leaders serve their interests. Democracy became their perfect tool post-independence, a system that looks free but keeps Africa tethered. How? Through conditional aid, structural adjustment programs, and trade deals that favor Western corporations. Take France's grip on its former colonies. The CFA franc, used by 14 African nations, is controlled by the French treasury, ensuring economic dependence. Leaders like Senegal's Macky Sall until 2024 and Côte d'Ivoire's Alassane Ouattara have maintained this pact, winning praise as democrats while their economies bleed. The IMF's 2024 report on sub-Saharan Africa lauded democratic reforms, but admitted growth lags at 3.6%, barely keeping pace with population growth. Meanwhile, Western multinationals like Total and Glencore extract billions in oil and minerals annually, leaving crumbs for locals. African leaders comply because democracy rewards them with legitimacy abroad and power at home, never mind the cost to their people. But here is where the mask slips, comrades, and where our Pan-Africanist hearts must swell with resolve. While these democratic charlatans cling to power, a new breed of African leader is rising. Men like Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who at 37 has become a beacon of hope, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the continent. Traoré, who seized power in a 2022 coup, rejects the democratic playbook entirely. He speaks not of elections, but of results, food security, industrialization, sovereignty. Since taking over, he has nationalized gold mines, expelled French troops, and aligned with Russia and China for partnerships that prioritize Burkinabe interests. Under his watch, Burkina Faso's gold production hit 57 tons in 2024, with revenues funding schools and clinics per government reports. Compare this to Mali, where democratic regimes left 70% of the population in poverty, or Niger, where uranium enriched France while locals lacked electricity. Traoré's junta, alongside Mali's Assimi Goïta and Niger's Abdourahmane Chiani, has formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a bloc that shuns Western dictates and seeks self-reliance. On X, Traoré's speeches go viral, with Africans from Ghana to Ethiopia hailing him as the new Sankara. His mantra, "Africa must develop itself," is a slap in the face to leaders who bow to Paris and Washington. And oh, how these democratic leaders squirm in his shadow. They are embarrassed, comrades, because Traoré exposes their failure. While they tout elections, he builds roads. While they beg for aid, he negotiates trade. While they silence protesters, he rallies his people against jihadist threats, securing 20% more territory in 2024, according to the UN. The African Union, that club of suited elites, suspended Burkina Faso for its coup, yet its democratic members, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, face unrest over the same issues Traoré tackles head-on: inequality, unemployment, neo-colonialism. In July 2024, AU Chair Moussa Faki praised democratic progress but dodged questions about Kenya's protest deaths. This double standard is why Africans are losing faith. A 2024 Afrobarometer survey found only 28% of Africans believe their countries are fully democratic, down from 46% a decade ago. The youth, especially, are done with the charade. "We don't want votes, we want jobs," a Nairobi protester told Al Jazeera last year. Traoré hears them, the Democrats do not. So why must African leaders stop this farce? Because democracy, as practiced, is a chain around Africa's neck. It forces us to play by rules that were never ours, to prioritize Western approval over African needs. It creates leaders who campaign as saviors, but govern as puppets, signing deals that enrich foreigners while their people starve.